Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for attending our very first workshop in this year's 2021 El Paso Giving Days workshop series. This year we will be going over a few new topics that we really haven't discussed before, as well as been introducing some awesome new speakers. So speaking of awesome new speakers, today joining us is Tim Sarrantonio. Please correct me if I'm saying that wrong, Tim.
No, you got it.
Good. Okay, good. Well, Tim, today we'll be discussing how to turn Giving Day donors into year-round impact with a special focus on retention. And he has some really great data to show you all today, especially on the other Giving Days that are around the country. So it's some pretty great information. But just to give you a brief kind of synopsis of Tim and his awesome work, Tim is a team member at Neon One and has more than 10 years of experience working for and volunteering with nonprofits. Tim has raised over 3 million in various causes, engaged and enhanced databases of all sizes, procured multiple successful grants, and formulated engaging communications and fundraising campaigns for several nonprofits. He has presented at international conferences and is a TEDx speaker on technology and philanthropy and was named NonprofitPRO's 2020 Technology Professional of the Year. Congratulations, Tim.
Thank you.
And he volunteers heavily in his home of New York.
Yeah, you can just skip over where I actually live. That's fine. It's New York.
So sorry. Yes, New York. But Tim, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Really excited to be joining you folks today. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. right now because the Giving Institute, which puts out the Giving USA report, is meeting. So we just got out of our board member thing, and it was nice to get back to, boring meetings and voting and procedures. It was a little comforting, actually. Also, relating to today's presentation, I'll also be citing some data from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which I am an executive member of, and that is the largest analysis of donor retention, acquisition, just overall individual giving data in the world. So I'm going to bring some of that fresh data over to you today. Let's go ahead and get started. Practically speaking, by the way, I might throw out some questions and stuff like that. If you want to type into the chat any answers or questions that you may have, that's kind of how we can do that to make sure that the recording is pristine from, hopefully the only sound that you might hear in the background is the air conditioner, because I am in a hotel room, which is weird to be able to do that again. So really excited about this topic in particular, because, and we could kind of skip over a little bit, but I do love Texas. El Paso, I know, comprises also areas of New Mexico, and you touch in Mexico itself and stuff like that. So I got some really fun data, at least from Texas, that we did relatively recently, but I am also starting a pretty major report on individual donor behavior that should comprise a lot more information and also potentially more from your community itself. So what are we going to learn today over the course of the next hour? Tiny bit about us to give context for why we are in particular very astute at talking about retention. Look, I work for a tech company. You don't care about my tech company right now. You care about retention. That's what we're going to focus in on. Okay, so I want to be able to say I'm a subject matter expert because I work with this every day, but it's more important to actually get into what is happening on the ground for organizations like yours. So I do have some Texas specific data. I have a tiny bit of El Paso city data too off the top of my head, but it's not super robust compared to what I'm going to be going through on kind of the higher level. And then more importantly, what can you do to activate year-round generosity and turn that Giving Day donor into a year-round engaged person? And that's really important. I'm going to give some tactical suggestions here, but retention is vital for your organization. And that's mainly where we're going to live today. What we're not going to get into is a whole lot of like, this isn't a, kind of a deep dive on, okay, so when the Giving Day donor comes in, here are the 3 emails that you're going to send out after. Not going to be able to do that in an hour today. I can wax poetically about that. Maybe we'll touch on that in the question and answer side, but we're really not going to be able to get into the specifics there. You could talk to our team, definitely do that. We also have a lot of excellent trainings that are coming up through some really exciting work that we're going to be doing later in the year. So not going to get too deep into the details, but give kind of a high level importance on retention. Why we are experts at this is because this is all we do. We don't make stuff for pizza parlors or yoga studios or things like that. We only help organizations like yours. And so what we're trying to do is create a platform and a set of services that help you raise more money and build sustainable long-term growth, because that's what we need. The average nonprofit, out there, 90% of nonprofits are typically not going to make more than $3 million in terms of their annual revenue. And Giving USA, the newest report that came out, 69% of the industry's revenue comes from individual donations, not foundations and not corporate giving. It's people who you are building a generosity ecosystem. And that's why retention is so important. So we're going to get into that. The way that we do this is we provide a variety of solutions. We power some of the biggest giving days out there. So North Texas Giving Day, that's us. So that's how we get the insight of what's happening in the Giving Day side. And then we can see what's happening with individual donors too. So we have a lot of data for us to understand what's happening, but then we listen. And we talk with thought leaders like El Paso Giving Day too, bring those people together. It doesn't matter if they're using our platform or not. We want to hear what's happening in order to help you, because that's all that matters. That's all that matters. So that's the extent that you're going to hear about Neon CRM, basically. So cool. Other than use a CRM, that's going to be my big takeaway is I don't care if you use us, Bloomerang, whatever, like use something. Don't use Excel. And QuickBooks is not a donor management system. And that's because you need things that focus on retention. Now, we're going to get into the importance of retention, but let's see how Giving Days are faring so far, because this is a good bellwether on how your day is going to go. And so far, I am excited to say that what we've seen just in spring is very encouraging. So growth rates are going up. Peer-to-peer fundraising is getting more adoption too. So thinking about that when it comes to leveraging items. We've already seen thousands of organizations generate over 370,000 individual donations, 15 million in matching funds. But look at that first-time donor data. 91,000 new donors. And this is very, very good when it comes to the Giving Day itself, because typically, now, of course, it's important for you to think about your own data and your own metrics on this, but acquisition rates on a Giving Day typically for new donors is around 60%. Most of the people who might be giving to you on a Giving Day are probably introduced to your organization the first time during that. That's very important for retention. We'll get into why that's a very important data point, but no matter what, the Giving Day is a way that you can create a moment. It is important to create giving moments, and El Paso's Giving Day is an exciting giving moment that you can partake in that will drive that year-round generosity. But generosity is also, and I'm actually going through a course right now on philanthropic psychology, and it's important to understand that a person's identity in that they're looking at themselves and seeing themselves in your organization. So for instance, I see there's a gentleman, Tom, from the ARC, right? I used to work with adults with developmental disabilities. And so that's, for me, a passion. And I could see myself in an organization like yours because I see my background and my experiences. And people do this in ways beyond monetary elements. So if you start treating donors like they're an ATM, they pick up on that. So leveraging and offering and talking about volunteerism is another engagement point that can turn somebody into a long-time passionate supporter for your organization. So we're seeing overall growth across days and for individual organizations. So that's why I wanted to bring this data, because do El Paso Giving Day and take it seriously. That's the main point of this. Now, so 75 million already just from giving days too. Very, very exciting stuff. Now, let's get into the larger trends when it comes to retention. Now, retention is defined very simply in the donation space as somebody gave to you in 2020, they're back in 2021, they gave to you again. And this is really, really important because the average amount it costs to raise $1 for your organization, these are deep studies from experts like Jim Greenfield, who literally wrote the book on annual fund management. And so to raise $1, it costs your organization on average $1.25 to obtain that $1. Now you tell a board that, they're going to freak out. So what you got to do is you got to say, don't worry, because if we retain that person, the money goes down. The costs go down by somebody who you've already invested and gotten, perhaps through your giving day. Retaining them is vitally important. So retention, though, I'm going to be honest, typically is terrible in our industry. The vast majority of people who give to you are not going to come back. And so what we've been seeing with the Fundraising Effectiveness Project is those small dollar donors especially are actually getting really excited and activated. And a lot of times you're going to see those people come in on the giving day. And so the data is actually showing that small dollar donors are coming, they're excited. It's those mid-sized donors and those larger donors that your organization needs to worry about in some ways. But the giving day is going to help with those small folks. But also it's important, though, to keep those new people and make sure that they keep coming back. The average first-time donor retention in our sector is 19.6%, something like that. That means that over 80% of the people that you get through this giving day, if you are not paying attention to them, they're going to go away, which is terrifying, right? So that's why you need to have a very explicit strategy on how to engage those folks and lean into why they are in your generosity ecosystem. So that's what we're going to touch on today. That's the whole point, right? We're going to get into how to do that a little bit more explicitly. But first, I do want to give you at least some data. I know that El Paso is much bigger than Texas, but I do have some Texas data that we actually pulled together earlier this year that I thought would be fun to share. So your state, in terms of Texas as a state, is big. Okay, I know I'm leaning into a stereotype, but it's big. There's a lot of nonprofits driving a lot of revenue in that state and in your community. It's a very powerful source of what people are putting their money to. It's always important to remember that donor behavior, consumer behavior, the credit card is not magically just used for donations. People are buying groceries, they're going to Target, they're doing whatever, they're going to the coffee shop, they're paying for Netflix with the same money. Now, some donors are intentional and they do budget, but especially on giving days, it might be more akin to an unplanned thing for the organization. So that's why that first impression is going to matter. Now, where we're seeing organizations and donors giving to organizations, arts and culture, in terms of where people are ranking and giving, where Texans are giving, arts and culture is okay, education's okay. Sports and youth organizations, pretty high. A little not surprising there. But overall, these are the types of missions. People are generous across the board, though. And especially this is important for a giving day, where are Texas donors giving? So what we did was we actually analyzed the IP addresses without knowing who the donors are. So this is not some creepy privacy thing. It's literally just like, okay, I know that this person is located in Texas when they gave. And so for Texas donors who are giving online, actually 40%, 47% are giving to Texas nonprofits. So the vast majority of people giving online are giving outside of their communities. So that's why El Paso Giving Day is so much more important, because it focuses right in the community itself. So this is a way to activate that. They're also giving pretty high. The average gift to organizations in state is $228. So where they're giving, where they're living, they're giving over $200, but they're also giving a little bit more when they're donating out of state that we've seen. So this is looking at 2020 data too. So 2020, again, is a little bit of an outlier. And again, I understand that El Paso's giving community, it's bigger than just the state of Texas. And it also has its own geocultural nuances that, like, you go over to Austin, you go over to Dallas, and it's like, we're not the same as them. So I completely want to recognize that your generosity community is much different than the rest of the state. And even within it, there's different zones that are going to behave differently. And the messaging is going to also be different too. Offline giving, though, most people are giving in state, which I think is an important point. So this is when we're thinking about our year-round strategy, that making sure that if the majority of your giving day donors are, of course, coming in online, that you then make it very clear in any subsequent follow-up that you might have of that person in terms of other opportunities to invest into your mission, that, hey, you can also send a check and here's where you can do it. And so making the communications for the channel of how they want to contribute and making that easy is important, because especially those offline gifts tend to be larger in size. And also even some really exciting data that came out of University of Texas at Austin, I believe, where organizations who offer multiple revenue opportunities that go beyond cash assets, by the way. So not just check, not just online, but making it clear, like, we will accept stock. We will accept other assets. Those organizations have a 50% more success rate in terms of the revenue that they're going to generate. So having clear opportunities for people to give in different ways is important. But the lovely thing about El Paso is it's going to make it easy to donate online. And that's what matters in terms of that individual day. It's that year-round engagement where you kind of want to be able to expand the opportunities. If they're giving out of the country, Canada, Australia, a dab of places in the Caribbean outside of that. So most people are giving within the United States, but it was interesting to kind of see, oh, where are they giving outside? During COVID, the April surge, that first surge that happened, that we all just want to put our heads in the sand and make believe that it didn't exist, but it did. What we saw was that a lot of individuals were giving toward things like capacity building, food and agriculture. I know it's, again, a different community, but that kind of famous line for the Sarrantonio food bank, which everybody across the country is like, oh, see, like that. Those types of organizations did see a surge of donations across the state. And then disaster preparedness and housing and shelter, kind of those other terrible things that are happening, basically, people downgraded that. And we did see that across the industry. Again, Giving USA, that research, even, the people who were doing that right downstairs here in Washington, D.C., they saw that all types of missions generally went up, except for arts and culture, not a surprise. And then medical research went down in 2020 in general. So things like hospitals, I think I did see a attendee that had the beautiful Children's Miracle Network item. What we expect for those types of missions, by the way, we're going to see a rebound in 2021. So it's not all doom and gloom, folks, by any means. And then what happened on Giving Tuesday now, for instance, that happened in May, we saw a big focus on international and foreign aid. Actually, animal-related organizations made up nearly 50% of all the gifts just on Giving Tuesday Now. That was on May 5th, and all gifts in Texas were from donors giving under $1,000, regardless of if they gave through check, cash, stock, it doesn't matter. So this again is what can we expect on El Paso Giving Day? Small gifts, most likely. So building that kind of larger community to tap into, and then how do we lean into retaining those people? So this is what I'm trying to lay the groundwork for you to think about, is what's the persona of the person, and then how do you personalize the experience for them afterwards, which is what we're going to talk about. Now we're going to shift into outside of those moments and into the typical year-round challenges that you might face. I want to hear from you as well in terms of that, and then how can we address these from a retention-centered focus. So according to 2021's NonprofitPRO leadership study, the typical challenges that leaders like you face are, first and foremost, difficulty acquiring new donors. Well, that bodes well for El Paso Giving Day in terms of the acquisition rates, right? So this is a good investment of your time to take it seriously. General lack of resources, lack of awareness of your individual nonprofit to potential donors. That's kind of the beauty that we see in Giving Days, is that even if there's a directory and people can find different organizations, the fact that donors are thinking very intentionally about what is going to appeal to me and to learn about different organizations is a good thing. That's what's really exciting about Giving Days, is that it helps the community stand out, and then people can personalize and understand and fit their giving profile by going to the one platform, as opposed to just everybody shouting on Twitter or Facebook, please donate to me. Go to my website and fill out a different form each time for if I want to donate to multiple organizations. That's the cool thing about Giving Day platforms. And then retention. I want that number to be higher in terms of people freaking out about it, especially given the state of retention across the industry is at best 43%, and that's even the really exciting people that come back over and over. The vast majority of folks are going to leave, right? So that's a big red flag across the industry, as well as people are worried about the effectiveness of digital technology and fundraising. And so making that process as easy as possible, investing into the process to make it easy, is something that we need to pay attention a little bit more to. So when it comes to growth, some of the other data that we've seen is that it was actually a down year across the industry for smaller organizations. 7.2 decrease in average growth for organizations under $1 million. Now, we typically see on Giving Days that a lot of the folks who are doing well are actually of this size. So this is a really good capacity building thing. That's why we love them so much. But in general, the larger folks did fine, and that's because it's not hard to say they have more resources to invest into their stewardship engagement. So especially if you're falling into the typical nonprofit, that 90% that's basically at that 3 million and below, you have to be more intentional. You have to actually work harder, unfortunately, when it comes to this type of stuff. And so I remember my first job, for instance. It was at a day labor organizing center in the south side of Chicago, and the entire budget for 2 staff, all volunteer after that, was $89,000. You can imagine what I was paid as a grant writer in 2008. 2 years later, I end up working at a Catholic school. First week on the job, I get a $10,000 check. I didn't do anything, right? So the people are generous, but again, smaller organizations have to hustle a little bit more when it comes for that, in my opinion. So what we saw internally is everybody did well. Everybody did well. And that's why investment into a donor management system, I don't care if you use us or anything, if you're not using a CRM or you're using a CRM ineffectively, that should be a strategic priority shift. I'm not saying that you can solve that in the next few weeks or leading up to the Giving Day, but you should think about this as part of your overall 3 to 5 year plan, is the importance of this type of investment, because it will make you money. It will be able to take that individual giving moment and turn that into year-round impact. Because what donor management tools do is help manage retention well. All it is a technological representation of a relationship with a person. And so what you want to make sure is that, so, think about how many databases you might be in, right? Like that, I get a little worried about that. And on a personal level, because I know how many, but how much do people actually know about me when it comes to that? Are they actually personalizing? So we'll get into those strategies a little bit later, but you can stand out. You can stand out. And then even within the different categories, we saw healthy growth across our client base. And we serve several thousand organizations, including a few in El Paso directly. So what are your challenges though? You might sit here and have me blab on all this high level data, but if it doesn't resonate with things that you're worried about, then what are you challenged by? So use the chat. I'll take a look at that. What are you worried about that you need to address? What keeps you up at night? If you want to share, because I can try to adjust as well if you want to put that in there. Or maybe those did resonate. Or you don't have any challenges.
Well, Tim, I mean, I know from speaking to a lot of maybe people on the call, I know their challenges are, and maybe this is a little bit into a different topic, but how to engage younger donors when they're not as tech savvy and social media savvy.
Yeah.
Well, what do you, is that a concern of many, do you feel, or just
generational giving is going to become more important, especially because of that retention. And the reality is that and it's the engagement. And again, it's kind of like that I tie a lot of that stuff into the comfort around digital technology. And it's also like, I always make fun. We literally had somebody ask me on my team, like, how can we get a TikTok integration? I'm like, we don't need to prioritize a TikTok integration. Like that's not where we need to be focusing our efforts on. And so a few things when it comes to the savviness. Number one is, especially the platforms that you choose should be making this easier for you. That's our job. Our job is to make it easy that somebody can just click and go. Right. And that's why one of the big things that we're doing later this summer is completely overhauling our design process for online forms, adding Apple Pay, adding Google Pay, things like that. So we're pretty excited about that because it's going to make it easy that even older donors, grandma can click it and she'll be good to go. And the data actually is showing that even larger size donors are getting more comfortable online. So I feel that improvements in technology will help you. Now, at the same time, you need to be intentional about the form, the experience itself. Go and try to donate or send a friend of yours who has, maybe bribe them with, some wine or something like that and be like, hey, go donate. Like I'll pay you back. I'll Venmo you back. But go ahead and donate and then tell me how the experience was. How many clicks did it take to get to your form? Do you go to your website and it says donate, and then you hit donate now, and then it says please click here to donate, and then you get to the form after the third click, right? And then what happens afterwards? Where are they sent? And so what we're trying to get to, and we'll get into this in addressing this where data comes in. To make you folks connected fundraisers, there needs to be three things that we're thinking about: the donor experience and identity. What do we know about these people to personalize it? 70% of Americans, for instance, state that they're heavily driven by personalization. And this is even more important for those younger donors too, because they're getting inculcated by things like Netflix, where it's going to personalize your experience. But you don't want to be Netflix. You want to open up generosity. You want to go beyond that. And the data actually shows, when it comes to behavioral research, that the brain is activated when people give. So what you want to do is help people do what we are built to be, which is givers. right? So we'll get into tactically what that means, but overall, it's actually a lot better for us uh, we're going to win the fight against Netflix if we actually pay attention to who these people are. But you also need to think about the message that you're sending. Are you talking about you? Are you talking about the journey that you are walking with the donors and the program participants to make that happen, right? Are you walking with them, or are they walking towards you? Think about that. Think about that in terms of the message that you're saying. So let me say I have some questions. How can you use a CRM to engage volunteer board members to interact with donors? I could talk a little bit about that. I'm going to put a pin on that great question and come back to it, because I think I'm going to address that a little bit, but ultimately it's giving them something useful to do and the right information to make them feel comfortable with it. For an industry, I think if we all, like, this isn't like being a plumber, right? Like, I thought I was going to go to school and be an academic. Like, I thought I was going to go to get a PhD and teach at like some small Midwestern college for the rest of my life. Like, that was my plan. And then I get rejected from every PhD program, and I guess I'll go work at a nonprofit. That's how I got into the industry. This isn't like being a plumber, right? Where there's like a dedicated school. And so I bet each and every one of you has a different story of how you ended up in the island of misfit toys, as I like to call it, as fundraisers, right? So how do all our journeys, though, ultimately lead to that same path of professionalization? And really it comes down to that authenticity that you can have with people. Unsustainable growth, people always think growth is good. I think that's an excellent point, Kate, because you might, like, there's actually a lot of instances. Let's even take one of the biggest campaigns, the Ice Bucket Challenge. If you go back and look at what happened to the Ice Bucket Challenge afterwards, in terms of what happened to the organization's rapid growth, it basically collapsed ALS. And you could see this with other situations with like Coney 2012. Remember that? Remember that video, Coney 2012, Invisible Children, all that? Like, that guy ran naked into the street with the breakdown that he had, right? Like grow, and this is all top of mind because I'm really reading an amazing book. I think I have it here. Yes, Hooked on a Feeling. This book rocks because it talks about using and leaning into the emotions that activate donors. So that's what we're going to get into when it comes to retention, and sustainable growth is what we're looking for. And so there's even key investments that you can make when it comes to retention and the types of givers that you want to build that is sustainable, repeatable growth. My biggest recommendation that we're going to see even further, and we're developing amazing resources with a new partnership at Visa around, is recurring donors. I'm going to give you a few bucks monthly. Those people rock. Their retention rate's in the 80 to 90% range. And the average, we did a University of Dallas study on 6.4 million records in 2019, and we saw that the average gift was $63 in the monthly. And small organizations are really rocking this too. So that's going to be a recommendation that I'm going to make in terms of what are you telling Giving Day donors to do? Spoiler, I'm going to tell you to try to give them an opportunity to invest in a Giving Day program, which is different than, oh, just like choose this drop down that allows me to give monthly. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a fully realized program that has its own stewardship engagement. So, and that is a good recommendation for what your board members can focus on too. Okay, so I'll come back to paying attention to the chat, but now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes. Okay, all well and good, Tim. Thank you for dropping all these random statistics on me. But what do I do, man? What do I do? So I'll tell you what I think. Ultimately, though, you have to think about how this fits into what Kate brought up in terms of that sustainability. I just really get annoyed where a lot of the case studies that you always see, like, don't tell me what Charity Water did. I'm not Charity Water. I don't have that resource. Like, everything we see all the time is always focused on these really big nonprofits, right? And so that's why it's important to tell the story of what is sustainable for where you are in your organizational's growth journey. Because there's really 5 stages. The TCC group did this amazing analysis of growth and sustainability. And they found that you have your startup organizations and they can handle a certain level of operational maturity. Then you have kind of that growing nonprofit that might be seeing really rapid growth, or it might be seeing really nice measured growth. And then you have a mature operation that they can layer in different elements and different approaches. Like when your board comes back and says, we're going to hold another gala, you should be able to point to where you are in the maturity of your organization's operation to basically say, that's a terrible idea. That is not where we should invest our time. Basically, one of my TED Talks, and it made our auction partners not happy, but I basically did an entire talk on why you need to kill your black tie gala. I think there's ways that you can create events, by the way, and we can get into that a little bit later on. But overall, the point is that you're trying to get to that maturity stage, and so you need to find things that fit for you. So take the recommendations and then go back and look at your own data as well. And a profit loss statement is not that. A profit loss statement is not where you make your decisions. You should be looking at trends, especially over a 3 to 5 year period for your own donor base. So retention rates, growth in giving, how many donors are you losing? These are important items for you to think about. So tactically speaking, ways that you could tactically show your giving day donors. Okay, so what happened? The donations come in, the El Paso Giving Day team is completely spent. They're going to go home and just take a nap, basically, because they made sure that everything worked. Well, guess what? Your job is actually just beginning. And so things to think about that tactically might be cheap and reasonable investments, for instance, are quickly thinking about how you can do, even if it's just posting a general video on your Facebook page or something like that, I want to thank all the El Paso community for making magic happen to us, for us at the Ark, or us at this animal shelter, or whatever. Personalize it back to your mission and show them that love and you can do that. My phone's charging, but basically look what we're doing right now, right? The technology is pretty cheap. You pull out your iPhone or your Android and you hit record and you're pretty much on your way. So video is going to be an important and relatively cheap, if like no cost investment that you can make. And actually, the less fancy the video in some ways, data is actually showing that people like that authenticity. And it could be something as simple as, you know what, I want to show you what the Giving Day impact that you already had, what we know we can do. Let me take you around a quick tour around the facility, and I'm going to point out what you just helped make happen. Something like that, right? And so a person's going to retain 95% of the information they see in a video versus you sending like a big newsletter about it. So keep that in mind. And this is also leaning into what younger donors are doing. I think that no matter what, people's brains are wired for this type of stuff. It doesn't matter what age they are. We didn't suddenly like change humanity, folks. Like, did we start giving more online? Yeah. But like, people have been giving and being generous for ever. We don't have a society without generosity, right? So that hasn't changed. What is changing is the ways that people digest media. So communications, you're going to see a drum beat around communications here. Getting the data into your CRM is a really vital step. The quickest path that you can get the report out and get that data into the database is key. And being able to reference if they're a previous donor or not is an important, simple segmentation that you should do. The top 7 reasons that people stop giving are all communications based, and that includes death. Okay, and what I mean by that is, hi, they didn't give to my legacy giving program because they didn't know I had a legacy giving program. So that's a communications issue. So a lot of times it's that simple personalization that you can say, thank you for the first time that you've given to us on this giving day, versus thank you for coming back and giving on this giving day. Like, that's amazing that you've given to us this year already and you came back and did it again. And those are the 2 simple segmentations that you can do to personalize your message out of the gate. People will notice that. They will notice that, as opposed to thank you for your previous support of $50 in 2019. Like that, don't make it read like a tax receipt. That's what El Paso did for you. Okay, they covered that for you. So what you should be focusing on is leaning into the reasons of why they identified with you. The quickest path that you can do that is going to be able to be told through your CRM. So getting that data in there is very important. And again, with those 60% new donor acquisition rates, having even the copy ready to go, like that's what you can prepare right now, is go and write down like what are your different messages. Start socializing that and have them ready. Have those communication plans ready in advance. And as much that you can relatively automate this as possible that your CRM allows is going to be ideal. If you can pre-plan an email to send out, for instance, emails are still a really great channel, and you should be acquiring that information during the giving day, right? So you should have their email, so you should have that list ready to go. And actually, Tap Network and TechSoup just did a report, and they found that the vast majority of nonprofits are not segmenting their audiences. Don't be that. Segment. Even those two segmentations, that's all you got to do. So really, one of the things that I do love, and again, this is also not even necessarily a generational thing, and it could be a community thing too. Like, what ways are your donors in your community actually going to appreciate, right? Like if you have a large amount of Latino donors, are you putting your thank yous in Spanish, for instance, or using local dialect that is going to activate them, and lean into that, right? So think about that in terms of what is the love language that they're going to respond to, and think about how technology can support that. Technology should never be designed to replace that messaging. It should make your lives easier, but folks, fundraising is hard. Okay? Fundraising is hard work. And so the point is the technology should not be like anybody who promises a silver bullet and they say technology is going to solve all your problems, they're lying to you. They're just trying to get you to buy something. So what you need to do is sit back and go, how can this make my lives easier though? Because it should be if it's doing its job. So here's a simple process, an example process, and the El Paso team has access to this. So any of the slides and things like that, and feel free to send that out, by the way, afterwards. They can completely have this PDF. So first of all, let's think about this. You get the donation, it comes through most likely online the day of, and the platform is going to tell you what's happening. Get that data into your CRM as quickly as possible. Once you get it in there, then you can queue up either a letter that you can then print out and hand signed and say thank you so much. Have that copy ready, right? Like, get the lists queued up, your segmentations. If you can even use conditional elements that will automatically flag this is to this campaign, and maybe people over a certain dollar amount get something else. Lean into the technology doing that. I know systems do this, and a lot of them are very affordable, by the way, when it comes to this type of stuff. So think about different levels, right? Think about it like a Rubik's Cube of personalization, right? Like, how do you line up the three different elements of, like, I know what they gave, I know why they gave, and I know who they are, right? Like, if you can answer those three things and have the technology help you with that, you are in an excellent place. Answer as many of those as possible. And so try to personalize this, those handwritten, signings. This is a good thing that you can get the board involved in, Okay, I see that in our database that you actually know this person. Can you give them a call and thank them? Right? Tracking the relationship between your board and those individual donors is a really, really simple thing. Like, here's a list, here's a phone number, go call them. I don't need you to enter anything into the CRM. You wouldn't know what to do. Just here's the email list, go, right? So that's one way answering that question. So then, how do you use this? Because the reason I focus so much on this is because again, the data is very clear that the quicker you start stewarding people, the higher likelihood that they are going to come back and give again to you is. And actually, the response and retention rates go way up the quicker you get that second gift. The first gift is actually, it's important, but not actually as important as the second gift. And so you don't want to be the situation where the communication is like where all these companies, like I just read an article this morning where White Castle's calling people that applied to them like 5 years ago, right? They're calling all these, people who were in high school that applied to work at a fast food restaurant, and they're all like, are you interested in an interview? We'd love to have you come in. And it's like, I live in a completely different state and I'm going to college now. Why are you calling me? You don't want that to be the communication, right? Where it's like, I don't have any clue why I'm connected with you. You hear this all the time. And so the stewardship process directly leads to the retention process. So one is why, learning the behavior of why they gave. So even something like a donor survey, for instance, and asking them like, what made you give today? Learn more about them, and don't do it where you're just collecting the data and go, okay, like that's nice. Like have an action plan that you're actually going to follow up with this information. That's why you don't have to over engineer it. Keep it simple. You can literally just ask them like, you know, why did you feel like giving to us today? Like even ask the feeling, try to get into the emotion and understand that more. And tell stories. Think about the ways that is there a cohesive story that's being told when somebody goes to your website, and does that connect to the brand that you're trying to have people remember, and the feelings that they're going to remember in terms of like they felt good giving. We know that the brain activates when you give. So how can you make them remember that feeling when they see your logo again, when they see your communication again? So is it cohesive? Are you telling a cohesive story, or do you go to the website and it completely contradicts the message that you were telling on the Giving Day platform in terms of like, why people give, right? Well, I give because we want to help more puppies. And then you go to the website and it's only talking about a capital campaign. Well, why are you doing the capital campaign? I'm doing that because I want to help more puppies, right? That's what I'm talking about. Don't just talk about your output. Talk about why you're doing those things. And then make it easy. A really, really good focus for making sure that you can attract somebody again is a Giving Day donor has a pretty good potential to be turned into a recurring donor if you do your communication right. And then again, those retention rates go up. We're talking 80, 90% typically for a recurring donor. So that's one way. Another opportunity is go back and of course thank them a lot, but give them other opportunities to be involved too, such as volunteerism. Okay, maybe you're hurting for some help. Be strategic about that. Make sure you also have a good volunteer management process too, because that you don't want to say come volunteer and then they show up and it's like I don't have anybody to check you in. I'm sorry, right? You don't want that. But don't just think about retention as like creating touch points that only lead to money. What you're trying to do is creating passionate supporters, and volunteerism could be a good way for that. Or if you're doing your own internal peer-to-peer fundraising, such as you're going to have a big event, for Giving Tuesday later in the year or the end of the year December rush, and you're trying to create another giving moment. Like my favorite nonprofit that I'm a recurring donor to, they just launched. It's called Capital Roots, and their recurring giving program is called Harvest Helpers. So I get to say I'm a Harvest Helper. And then what they actually then did is they launched a fun event where it's like eat a chili pepper and tell us about like why you love us. So I'm going to do that, and then it's like, but you have to also donate. And I'm totally going to do that. Like, I want to look like a dummy eating a hot pepper. It's going to be nothing compared to what I can probably get from El Paso, but like, it'll still be good. But like, that's like, they're creating a moment. They're creating a moment for me to invest in. So leaning into that identity for moments is something that you want to reactivate. So again, those monthly updates, right? You want to be able to constantly be communicating with them. And it's not like your monthly newsletter that just says like, hi, here's a donate button at the bottom of it. Like, tell the story. What happened on the Giving Day? If you don't go back 3 months later and say, remember when you did this? I want to tell you what happened, right? And you're not doing it solely in service of the donor. That's a big thing. We're not, we don't want to create it where we're creating like this weird hierarchical thing where our donors own us. What we're trying to do is build that community where they're alongside in just as important as the program people, right? And they feel like they're walking along, but never compromising the mission. That's the important thing. Our donors don't dictate the mission. We dictate the mission. That's why they're investing in us. So telling them what you are doing and working with your program team to talk about that, that's important. Talk about how many puppies you saved, how many books you gave to kids, things like that. But you don't lean into the number, you lean into what it represents. The number, donors don't care necessarily that you gave 15,000 books. What they want to know is what the impact of that actually represents. Kids can read now. They have access to clean water. They can eat. Things like that. Again, the emotions. Okay, we're coming up to the end. Let's see. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty much final thing. So where does tech actually play into this? Again, your CRM, these are the things that you should be thinking about. First and foremost, whether the demographics that you're collecting. So things like donor surveys and things like that. Relationships, going back to the board member example. Hey, I saw Bill gave. How do you know Bill? Put it in a note field. All right, something like that. Interests. Why did they give, right? What do they like? Can you collect information that helps you have a more realized understanding of it? And you don't have to over-engineer this. Easy example I always give is I always got annoyed that the animal shelter where I adopted my buddies, my 2 cats, they never reference that. And in a database, in a CRM, that is adopted, yes or no, drop down. That's it. And then suddenly you have a segmentation that you can actually say. Imagine if you were going to take it a step further and actually put the names of the animals in the thing, right? So think about your programs. How can you add little easy things that make your job fun, right? Personalization is fun, especially when you could do this at scale. You need to go beyond first name, comma. That's not personalization anymore. But it could be done through simple things of like, I have a really good idea that this segment of donors is in this geographic area, and we're going to have an event over there. I'm going to go tell them about that. Hey, we know that you live right around the corner from this great barbecue place. Come on in. Something like that, right? Like little messaging tweaks like that. And so how can you understand their identity? How can you activate their identity, their true self, who they see themselves as? That's the ultimate goal. Don't, and I bring up prospecting data because a lot of services, and again, I'm at the Giving Institute, like all these people are here. Scanning for wealth is important. We have a great tool that does that every 2 weeks automatically for organizations, but don't just sit there and wait for like, okay, it looks like this person has $1 million capacity. Looks like I should be focusing only on them. You got to marry the affluence data with the affinity data, but there's some hidden gems that you might find in your Giving Day acquisition, right? Like whenever you have a big campaign like a Giving Day donor list, if you do leverage wealth tools and can have that scan against it, this is a good list to actually prospect against. And then have your major gift officers or your ED, depending on the size of your organization, or your development director, whoever focuses on that major donor cultivation, you might find some hidden gems just through the acquisition that happened in the Giving Day. So prospecting and scans against this is good. There's a lot of nuances that go into doing this properly. That is definitely not what we're getting into today, but also that omni revenue engagement opportunities that I was talking about, things like peer-to-peer fundraising. Events are going to come back. They are going to come back, but be strategic about them. Don't have a party to just have a party, right? Create a event, create a moment that people feel like they're part of. Recurring giving, I'll talk about that till the cows come home. And then legacy giving. We're going to see a lot more of that. And especially talking about that with younger donors is also going to be more important, because they might not be necessarily thinking about that. And we're going to see, unfortunately, more of an encroachment of companies who are trying to basically claim the mantle of philanthropy, right? That corporate social responsibility, right? That's not, that they're using us to get them paid. So what we need to do is think about how we're going to combat that. And the ways that we do this is, Nike's not going to leave a legacy. You are through us. Okay. Don't give your money to them. Give our money to us. We did some excellent analysis of peer-to-peer fundraising around Giving Days in particular. So, go check out the report that we did, some really fun data there. And I am currently also leveraging, and we heard directly from a successful Giving Day nonprofit who wrote the chapter on how they turn things in. So Sarah Willey, one of my favorite folks She worked for nonprofits in the St. Louis area and has done some amazing retention items for her organization. So you hear a little bit about that in there. It's a free report, a lot of fun data. So if you liked me talking about data and you're not sick of me, this has got me written all over it because I wrote it. But okay, that's what I got.
Thank you so much, Tim.
I hope that was helpful.
No, I was taking lots of notes. This was super, super great. I loved your little tidbit on corporate social responsibility and how that isn't basically our responsibility. So we need to remind our donors. But no, this was all so great. Does anybody have any questions? I did want to open it up for questions. We have, Tim did mention the thank you note process. So I just wanted to share my screen really quickly with you all to just remind you how you can create your own thank you note.
Awesome.
Again, it's not, when you want to include certain colloquial language or certain tidbits for the donors, of course, you need to reach out ahead of time. This will be a general thank you email that all of your donors are going to receive. But let's go ahead, of course. And then are you all seeing, what screen are you seeing?
The edit profile page.
Cool, awesome. I always mess it up somehow. But this is the back end of a sample organizations page. If you go all the way to the bottom, this is where you can create that custom thank you email. Of course, each of your donors will receive an automatic thank you message from the Paso Norte Community Foundation, elpasogivingday.org. They will be receiving that with tax deductible language. So your organization is not responsible for sending that tax deductible letter. It is the community foundation's responsibility, so we send that out automatically. If you do have a donor from 2020 that has misplaced that letter, please feel free to contact me and I can resend that email, or if they would like it via snail mail, please let me know as well. But this is where you can create that custom thank you email. You can have this from your info email, your contacting whoever you would like this to go back to, the subject and the body, to make it a little bit more personable for your organization's donors. But I just wanted to remind everyone of that cool feature we do have on the platform. But were there any questions?
Yes, I saw a donor survey question. I personally think that it's good to collect as much understanding about a person, especially at that first gift, as much as possible, because again, understanding how they're going to make that second gift is actually the real hard part. I'm going to pop in a very, very, very high level introduction to donor surveys, facts and myths. It's from the agitator, Roger Craver. Basically, him and his partners over there at Donor Voice are like the experts when it comes to this type of stuff. So just, I love everything that team does. So I popped that into the chat to check out, specifically on donor surveys. I just quickly Googled that. But try to get it after the first gift for sure.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. Well,
sure. Any other question? Maybe time for one more.
Tim, this is going to be a personal question.
Sure.
Tim, since you work with so many different giving days,
yeah.
What would you say is your favorite giving day? I love New Orleans Giving Day, Give NOLA. I think that they do some really cool stuff. Also, but the thing is that, like, I love that because I love New Orleans, right? And so that's kind of the beauty of it, is that where people who live in El Paso, they should be saying you because of that, right? So I'm biased because I love New Orleans and I don't have a giving day where I live in Niskayuna, New York, trying to change that. And Chicago lost there, but see, there you go. Isidro, yes. Isidro Torres from NAMI El Paso is one of our awesome committee members for El Paso Giving Day, so he better say that.
Yeah. But and it's not even like, when I first started, I came out of the CRM side of things, and the reality is that I didn't like, giving days are so misunderstood. People don't get them, right? And if they're coming from the industry, like, I've talked to people at Salesforce and Facebook, and they just do not get the concept. They're just like, what do you mean? Like, you just go to a website, right? Like, no, it's not just going to a website. We're building a moment. So I love all giving days. It's not a cop out. I do believe that.
Beautiful way to say it. You're building a moment. That's definitely what we try to do here at the community at Boston North Community Foundation for all of y'all.
It's some of the best moments that your donors can have. It should be feeling like Christmas for them in many ways, right? And that's what you're trying to activate. And a great book on this is The Power of Moments, right? It's a really good book to pick up. It's more like you're going to remember the peaks and the valleys. You're not going to remember sitting, I have young kids, right? And I know we're at time, but I'll tell this one rambly final story. I have young kids, and if I'm sitting in line at Disney World 3 months later, I'm not going to remember standing in line for 45 minutes. I'm going to remember the moment when my kid put the Mickey Mouse ears on. Or I'm going to remember that, when I had to pick her up and she knocked a tooth out, right? Like, because she got hurt at the playground and she was sad. You're going to remember those moments emotionally. So that's what we should try to remember when people are interacting with our organizations. Every opportunity is a moment to be memorable. And the Giving Day is you have an amazing platform to do that. Not every community has that, by the way. And especially with the importance of equity, diversity, equity, inclusion coming up, our communities need us now more than ever. And the fact that this is a easy, accessible way for anybody that can feel part of a generosity ecosystem, I love it. Anyway.
No, thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate your love and your passion for Giving Days. Definitely, it's 100% noticeable. Thank you so much. Provided some great information to all. Again, this was recorded, so I will be sending out the link if you have any, if you'd like to review or send it to any participating orgs, as well as the slides. I will be sending those out.
And if you have any follow-up questions, if there's anything that I can help you with, I drop my email, tim@neon1.com. Happy to help folks. That's what we're here for.
Thank you so much, Tim. Well, everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time at our next workshops on communication guidelines and timelines. Thank you.
Awesome.